Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching The Salty Sea, and it has been at least a month since I recorded, but I have been playing games. There's been some life stuff that's gotten in the way of me sort of actually planning out videos, making the little PowerPoint presentations that we all know and love. But I have gotten to play quite a bit of Warcry in that time, and so figured I would show a couple of the games that I played that felt pretty relevant to this kind of new post FAQ, post meta watch meta game that we are seeing shape up, and they were both pretty fun. So we can kind of get into it. The first one, I wanted to try Caradron Overlords with the new points, and my buddy wanted to try some of the new sweet Ogroids, the whatchamacallits, the Ogroid Therodons. So these guys, these I think they're called Therodons. And so he brought a Thoricon with the Axe and Shield, a Dark Oath War Queen, the Ferocious Therodon with Great Axe. This is the piece that we're actually pretty bullish on, as far as for 250 points, having something that deals a lot of damage for a cheaper points cost than what the Myrmidon and FOMO Crusher will give you. And so it kind of slots in a very different type of list, which is nice. And then 6 Marauders. One good reason to try it is I think Marauders are among the best chaff standing. Now, there is some speculation about whether they'll be around long term, but it could be a year before we get the new Dark Oath rules. I mean, let's be honest, right? So until then, Marauders are still there, and Marauders are among the cheapest or the best cheap fighters in the game, and so I think Slaves to Darkness is in a great spot, and so it's worth checking out if these Therodons are any good. I tried Caradron Overlords, a Mizzen Master, the Errant Quester with Grand Sword, Ferocious Annihilator, the one with +1 attack, with Grand Hammer, 5 Arcanauts with Pistol, and 1 Arco with Spear. With the Ogre nerfs, the Ferocious Annie Prime, Annie Prime Grand Ham, is now, I think, one of the most points efficient sort of damage dealing, sort of just combat winning fighters in the game. It is on kind of a smaller weight class than those old fighters were, but in terms of point for point, I think it gives you a ton compared to anything else right now. There's some other things that are similarly points efficient, but it is really up there. And so I think Annihilator Primes are very much worth playing and worth trying. I wanted to try it with a Quester Soulsworn to kind of push it up the board a little bit. And the Quester Soulsworns, they have some things on their own that are worth sort of fighting too. So then the other thing I was interested in, Spear Arcanauts are ridiculous. I had to put one of them in, and I wanted to see if 5 points was enough of a nerf to Arcos to really change how they play. So the mission we played is Strewn Riches. This is one of my favorites from my original title pack. Basically, this is a quarters mission. You score for each quarter of the battlefield that you have a fighter wholly within. So it creates these sort of 4 little battles about, trying to see if you can push your opponent out of one of the quarters. And one of the things that kind of grounds those battles is at the end of the game, round 3 and 4, really round 4, is like this mad dash to pick up the treasures. And so that kind of dictates where you can be and how far you can run. You can't really run all the way to the corner in Strewn Riches. So that kind of gives a whole extra layer to the quarters battle that I think makes it really fun. And I've gotten a great game out of this one, every time I've tried it. So let's take a look at how the game actually went. First, let's take a look at the warbands. Kind of a crazy concept art to them, but I decided to put both Stormcast in the same deployment group, just to see how the combat. These Beasts to Darkness on an all converted S2D army. Now those Doom Bulls are actually built with Therodon bodies, so they actually have the perfect little cross proxy here. Basically, they're Ogroid Therodons with Doom Bull heads. So just run them as that goat with a bra on is a Dark Oath War Queen, which is really funny. And then, of course, goats with flails are just Marauders with flails. Unfortunately for me, the way deployment worked here was that my weakest deployment group ended up being my most important deployment group as far as how we rolled to make everything happen. So it put me right with that terrifying Therodon right in my face. But I've got the Mizzen Master and two more Arcos on the side there. My combo, the big combo, isn't going to come on until round 2, which is a little tough for me. The other big Doom Bull Therodon is also on round 1. And then Cody's got the Dark Oath War Queen and two goats coming in round 2. So round 1 started actually with a rampage of the Therodon coming in and destroying my Arco with Spear, which ruined my experiment to see if that guy was any useful at all. Otherwise, there was a little bit of jostling for the center position and just desperately trying to get Arcos into position to be able to contribute anything at all on this game and kind of moving them towards treasures. If you take a look at the quarters of the battlefield, you can see both players kind of getting fighters just over the line. That's generally how you want to play this mission, is being as close to the line as you can. And you can see both of us have done that in multiple spots with fighters so that we both end up scoring all 4 possible points. This game continued being defined by rampages. First, we had, a little Arco running away to get the treasure there, as well as more Arcos being destroyed, sort of where my original deployment group was. But the crazy thing, it was taking down this Thoricon with the Annihilator Prime. Basically, the Quester blowing its horn once, pushing the Annihilator up, and then using a rampage to get up there and just do of smacking around. Wild how when you put the blessing on an Annihilator Prime that you can start to take really big things out in 2 hits. This would have been Force of a Falling Star, I think. So, or maybe it was just a low rampage number. But either way, 3 attacks from a ferocious Annihilator Prime can threaten to take out pretty much anything in the game, which is pretty scary. That said, Marauders of Chaos do have firm control of the center of the a lot of flexibility to determine point scoring and sort of getting on whatever quarter they want to. And so they do score 4 quarters to the 3 from KO. So tragically, I lost the end of round 3 footage, which means there will be a lot of explaining to do, which is fine. So that is a dead Mizzen Master, which is going to be very funny. So in round 3, the Annihilator got another rampage, as did the Therodon. The Therodon killed a Arcanaut with it. The Annihilator killed the Therodon. And so this was kind of a funny game. So a couple things defined the game, really. One is that each side got to rampage twice. It should happen, I think, a little more than 1.25 times per game. So when each side rampages twice, that is just a lot, and it tends to define the game. It really it gives you a ton of weird value going on. So you learn a little bit less about the chaff matchup and more about just like the bruisers themselves. And what I would say there is that the Great Axe is really good. The Ferocious Annie is really good. But I would say that the Sword and Shield Therodons are not what you want. The Shield does give some extra survivability if you're in a fight with kind of lower level bruisers in the game. Some of the kind of not quite as scary fighters that are out there. But against like really terrifying threats, I don't think it really adds anything for you. Like if you were fighting this guy, you'd rather have the Great Axe to give you the chance of winning the damage race, as opposed to just knowing that you're going to get killed and not even having that many fewer points to your point value. I do think that maybe Marauders are a tiny bit better than KO, shooters at this point, but that's really tough to say for sure. The 5 points though does feel significant in terms of how much sauce you can afford otherwise, but there's kind of a lot more needed there. I do think that the sort of 5 points did materially change how they play. It was also interesting where in KO I kind of snatched defeat from the jaws of victory here. I had an Annie that went to go take the center treasure, and instead I could have moved over to kill a marauder, and then my opponent Cody would not have been able to loot the center treasure. I would have been able to go loot it with something else later. Yes, something very killable, but who cares? The one thing that could have killed it would have died, and then I wouldn't have had to do this massive sort of gamble with my Mizzen Master, which was very silly, right? Because basically when I didn't kill the Marauder, it went and tied up my little Arcanaut, so my Arcanaut could not go get a treasure, which meant that we were going to tie, which meant that I didn't really need to, but I moved a Mizzen Master over to take out a Marauder. I thought it was about a coin flip, but it turned out it was actually 41% chance to take it out. And then the Marauder with Onslaught had a 28% chance to take out the Mizzen Master and did so, which meant that I ended up losing on KO. So, is that a good choice or a bad choice? It depends on how much you hate ties. I think in general, you should probably just stick with the tie, given that you're actually not likely to get the win anyway when you run it over. But that's kind of to each their own. The one real big mistake is actually focusing on the mission or focusing on one treasure when essentially the Annie and the Marauder were both worth a treasure. So getting the treasure when I could have instead just killed the Marauder would have been much better. But so it goes. Kind of an interesting game. So let's get to the next one. The next one was Seraphon versus Lumineth. I was playing against Seraphon, Croxigore Strike. This is a Calthea Zandire with +1 strength, a Skinkstar Priest, 2 Ferocious Croxigores, a couple Saurus Warriors. A reason to try this: one, Croxigore are new and really good. When you give them +1 attack, they are incredibly points efficient for just how much damage they put out there. They cost the same as an Annie Prime. They're a little different, right? They are what kills them is slightly different. They do a little bit less damage, but they are a little bit faster. So they're a little different, but they're just very, very good in general. And I think a lot of people are excited about where Seraphon is. And then another reason to try this is that Calthea escaped nerfs, which makes her pretty exciting. It's cool to try the all-in combos before you start compromising to fit mission constraints in a new meta. And so this is just the most all-in you can get as far as, if you ever activate Calthea, getting both Croxigores a free action, that's pretty huge. I tried Lumineth's Stone Guard Soup, True Stone Seneschal, Mighty Slan Star Master, that's the +1 strength, Ferocious Quester with Grand Hammer. This is the hammer version this time. Instead, I was using the sword version last time. I generally prefer the hammer version, but the sword version was fully painted, which is why I used it last time. It's actually just a Vanquisher, but whatever. 4 Stone Guard and a Warden. Why you should try this: one is that Stone Guard are some of the most points efficient cheap fighters left in the game. They do a ton of damage. They're not quite as all in as their cousins like Scale Breakers or Desecrators in terms of move 3 high damage fighters, but they are still quite solid and can put out real damage and can cover objectives because they're only 85 points instead of those ones being 95 and 100. So they're very interesting. The Slan is one of the top power projectors in the game. I think its ability to kill things from far away is nearly unparalleled. I mean, the Varengard at the same points cost maybe does it better, but there are some positives or negatives to each of them. There are some reasons to prefer the Slan. You also get some synergy between shooting and slow hammers, and that there's a lot of things that those little Stone Guards can't reach, and your Slan gets to them. The Quester is there to get fighters into position, which is especially important with Stone Guard, which are big enough to be worth using that double on to move them around. And this also gives you some sort of fast thing or projecting thing in every single deployment group, where your Slan can be in one deployment group shooting stuff, the Quester can be in one deployment group giving free moves, and then you just have the Warden in one deployment group just being fast. So that gives you an element of reach in each deployment group, which is really nice to have. And then you just put your True Stone Seneschal maybe with your Warden, so that you have at least a real fighter in that group. So the mission that we played is Might Makes Right, which is sort of the most classic mission in Warcry. This one's from the title pack, but it was originally from Red Harvest. People have been playing it for ages. You put one objective in the center of the battlefield, and then both players get to put an objective somewhere, and then they fight over it. Usually, you want to put them in like a little triangle where you can double cap your own objectives, but it's really difficult for your opponent to get to the double cap areas. But that can be tough too, because then a lot of the time the places you want to put that are really easily ambushable by the oncoming hammers. So let's take a look at how the game went. I'm going to jump straight into deployment here with the Lumineth kind of deployed on terrain. You see Calthea kind of deployed carefully, where the Saurus is also on terrain. The Slann and another Stone Guard are also just hanging out on terrain. Everyone kind of sticking to the that were other than maybe a couple of these. And right away, now you can finally see where the objectives were placed. A Warden was able to be fast and run right up to Objective 5, while the rest of the Seraphon kind of take control of the center of the board. However, one of the issues of facing against Slann is that the Slann Star Master would take out Saurus Warrior, basically first activation, and then use the double to get a free extra action, which was then an attack onto the Croxagore, which is quite a bit. That's kind of what Slann Star Masters can set the tone early, kind of change the activation situation in a game like that, which is quite a bit. Otherwise, not a lot of sort of fighting, just kind of some getting into position. The Calthea plus Croxagore combo is kind of alive in the center of the board. So our fighters deployed onto the edges of the board here, and the Quester Soulsworn was able to get everyone into position with its ability and sort of create a fight around this Croxagore, which should be pretty interesting. Lumineth were so advantaged on activations, they were kind of able to force the Croxagore's hand. So it went up, killed a Stone Guard, and then got taken out for its troubles, which is a little bit tough for it. There's also a bit of around objective as the Stone Guard Seneschal is being attacked by Calthea. And there's also, the Skink and the Saurus Warrior getting ready to fight the Warden as well. So a couple epic battles ensued. First, Seraphon takes control of Objective 5. Then there is quite a battle for the center of the field. Now that we're seeing the remains of the Croxagore over there. The center of the was a Quester Soulsworn getting some good attacks into a Croxagore, and then just getting obliterated by the Croxagore in response. But then, because there were Stone Guard nearby, the Stone Guard were able to take down the Croxagore and finish it off. That's sort of the benefit of Stone Guard and their extra reach. You can kind of engage with the Soulsworn and then have the Stone Guard kind of hanging out behind it, something like that. The Slann was also able to get some shooting in, so they were able to kind of bully the Croxagore out of the center of the battlefield, even though it's sort of so much bigger and so much scarier, because was able to manipulate early, and then everything kind of cascaded from there. So at this point, Lumineth do kind of in round 3 take a pretty large control of the game, but Avery had some tricks up his sleeve to try for some Hail Marys there. You also see the Skink Star Priest running all the way over to objective, because they'd already won Objective 5. So finally, Calthea tried to take out my leader and then run over and take out the sort of cow hammerer over there, and it just didn't end up working out, and then the cow hammer was able to take out Calthea. The Skink Star Priest did go take an objective there. Just wasn't enough. Lumineth still winning 3-2 on objectives in this round, and the amount of kills happening on objectives actually just didn't even end up favoring Seraphon by that much. So that's a a pretty decisive win in the end for the. So, in recap, Might Makes Right is such an interesting mission in that it sort of allows you to think about both numbers and lethality, which I think is just a good place for missions to be. And that is kind of a scary place to face down Stone Guard because Stone Guard are so well positioned to not have to choose between numbers and lethality. At 85 points, they're not the sort of most board flooding chaff out there, but they can get some real numbers onto the board. And then, you can have still a lot of damage output coming from them. So as long as they're not getting one shot killed, they will eventually take over in melee. I think figuring out the right shell to play with Stone Guard is all about sort of how do you engage. Your opponent is not likely to have more than one thing that can one shot kill a Stone Guard. Obviously, this game was unusual in that respect, in that both Croxigores were capable of it. But it's all about how do you engage the opponent's piece that can one shot kill your guys and kind of keep it busy for a while then the Stone Guard are able to sort of accumulate their damage over time. And in this game, they were really able to do that. First, the Slann was able to pepper down one of the Croxigores, so it only took out one Stone Guard before going down. And then the other Croxigore had to spend all its time killing a Quester Soulsworn and, getting some damage taken in response as well. And so the Stone Guard were able to finish it off too. So I think they're very well positioned in these types of missions. Anything that is sort of a kill and objective hybrid mission, I think Stone Guard are in a really great spot. It also made me think a lot about what's the right Croxigore shell. I think Avery, had the good idea to just try it out, just going all in. And, I think in this situation, it felt like they wanted more support chaff. Avery felt like he made a mistake letting his Saurus Warrior be out there for my Slann to shoot twice at. That might be true, but it still felt like even if it had survived, it still would have been nice to have one or two more guys. Calthea boosting a Croxigore is really incredible, but it's a real commitment, and it's tough when the Croxigores come all over the board, or if you want to just put them in one place so that they're going to come on with Calthea. That's tough because then your deployment groups are really skewed, so that means sometimes you can really get screwed that way. So I think having Calthea with the Croxigores is a bit of a gamble. I'm not sure I would want to go that far. I might just go for a Quester, something like that. But also, we didn't see a lot of big triples coming out of Avery that game. Avery, I think, wanted to prioritize some other things, like prioritize some Croxigore abilities, stuff like that, which is kind of a different style to play them. I think it's really tough to tell what the right Croxigore shell is, but Croxigores are definitely good, and they are, definitely worth playing. I don't think, seeing them lose this game to I came away thinking that Stone Guard are pretty ideal for these types of games, and something that is very much worth looking into in this new meta game. And so losing to them on this mission is not too big a deal. Whether the Slann Starmaster was dominant or not, it was really good early in the game and kind of then just didn't do anything in round 3 or 4, but that was okay because that was when the Stone Guard started to take over the game. So is it nice to have because it's so impactful in round 1, where the Stone Guard are so impactful later in the game? That's maybe an interesting debate to have. I think the jury is out on whether it's better than, say, having an Annihilator Prime plus an additional Stone Guard. Probably kind of mission dependent whether you'd rather have which one of those. It is nice to have the extra numbers, for example, but that's a really high bar, and so I think that shows that Slann are really good. There's not a lot of ways to spend 285 points that is better than an Annihilator Prime and a Stone Guard. So if, whether or not the Slann fulfills that requirement or not, the fact that it's even a debate, I think shows the power of that piece, which is pretty cool. So this has been kind of a, a pretty wonky set of battle reports here, but This is how I like to do battle reports: is try to learn as much from every single game as possible. I think I see a lot of people just kind of buzz through games, which can be really fun. But I think it's best to try to learn as much as you can from each individual game, even if that leads to you playing a few less games. So this has all been pretty detailed. I will have some maybe sillier Warcry content coming up soon. And until then, may all your rolls be crits.